as a phys ed teacher, I want to put every personal trainer out of business. And that's the mentality that you can prepare students to move and to live and develop an appreciation and the skills so that they can select what they're doing. We're ruining the outlook on fitness because of what we think physical education should be doing. But physical education, as it should be rooted in the blend of fitness to prepare them with the skills and knowledge to do it for the rest of their life.
Welcome to the Breaking Muscle Podcast, where every week we bring you interviews with those in the trenches in the fight against the obesity epidemic. I am Pete Hitzeman, managing editor at BreakingMuscle.com, and your host for today's show. For all our advances in medical technology and understanding of how the human body works, we don't seem to be getting any healthier. In fact, the first generation in American history with a shorter life expectancy than their parents has already been born. Lousy diet choices and a culture that demands sedentarism from cradle to grave have spawned a health crisis that costs us $147 billion annually and is the second leading preventable cause of death in the United States and worldwide. The answer to all of this, according to Ben Rollenhagen, is how we equip people from an early age to manage their own health and fitness. Ben's job is to create future physical education instructors at Central Michigan University, and he believes that a move away from the current emphasis on sports and performance is crucial to creating a population that doesn't require personal trainers, much less bariatric surgery. Ben and I discuss the foundations of his lifelong fitness philosophy, how we can decide for ourselves how strong is strong enough, and the current threatened state of physical education in America. He unpacks the mindset behind many of the excuses people use not to get fit, and discusses the nature of the challenge we face in helping people overcome those excuses. He illustrates the danger of blind adherence to arbitrary performance benchmarks, and talks about how he's working to save physical education through his work at the Specialized Foundation. If you're a fan of the show, please do us a favor and head over to iTunes or Stitcher and leave us a rating and a review. And if you're not a fan of the show, tell us how we can do better by sending us an email at editorial@breakingmuscle.com. Joining us today on the Breaking Muscle podcast is an instructor for physical education and sport at Central Michigan University. He's also a consultant for the Specialized Foundation, and he's fighting what may be the most crucial fight in the culture of fitness or unfitness in America. Ben Rollenhagen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
So you and I got into a debate a while back, and then we stopped and said we need to save this because it would be a fantastic podcast. And the root of the debate is how fit do people really need to be, right? You teach a course that is fitness for life. And so what is your perspective? How fit is fit enough?
And that's the challenge. I use the cliche that I don't have like a 60-day plan or 90-day this or 30-day that. My joke is the 60-year plan. So what that means is that you should never be in that big of a hurry to recover, to use hypertrophy, to adapt, to change. My biggest question is what is the hurry? Why do people need to supplement or replace or do all these kinds of things? So in my class, my philosophy is to just take, there's no hurry. There's no deadline. There's no benchmarks, goals by this time. I mean, sure, you use goals for motivational purposes, but there's no end result. It's fitness for literally 60 years. And again, I've got college students, so on average it is about 60 years. So, I'm not talking to 7-year-olds who might, what are you talking about? Maybe it's 80 years. But yeah, so that's my big philosophy. And when you come down to how fit you need to be, it's a really hard question to answer. And I play this kind of game with my students, and it's kind of the why game, and it's almost never ending. And that's kind of my position as an instructor. I can't be wrong. They can have, after we play the why game, if they can answer a why for everyone, I'll say, okay, well, let's develop a plan for that. But it's like, I want to be bigger, faster, stronger. Why? Okay, well, I want to be able to run faster. Okay, why? And you kind of just keep going and going and going, and at the end of the day, there's really no compelling reason. That's one of my favorite phases as well. Is there a compelling reason? And so when it comes to fitness, to me, it's usually to prevent injuries or muscle imbalances to function in your everyday life. I know and it's fun that you were coming at it from the competition or performance aspect. And so it's kind of apples to oranges at the end of the day, but it's how do you find that best blend?
Yeah, that's something that the CrossFit community, of which I know that you're a huge fan, has sort of recently they've sort of recently come to the realization that elite performance in CrossFit is not sustainable. That is not, when they say CrossFit is the system to make you better at life, that's true unless and until you start competing in CrossFit, because then you have to do some things that are not sustainable, that are, in the short term at least, very damaging to your physiology. You have to make some compromises to reach, the peak of performance at whatever your level is, whether that's national or international or just even your local competition. So I think that applies across competitive domains. So how do you square the circle between being fit for life and that element of competition that maybe is the only reason people keep coming back?
To me, if you can pull out some skills, some life skills, some successful behavior modification skills from these competitions, then there's value in it, right? If I'm competing just to compete, and then as soon as the competition's over, I didn't get anything out of it. I didn't get any time management. I didn't get any planning skills. I didn't know how to run my own program or any self-assessment or know how to develop or change or modify my program based on where I am now or an injury or the time I don't have or the kid I now need to involve and now I'm pushing them down the street, right? If I never got that out of this competition, it really was just kind of blip on a radar. It's weird for me to say this, but the more research I've done, the more just presenting and teaching I've done, the more I've come to the realization that, I'm not against competition at all. Trust me, I will compete drinking milk. I'll compete, in anything. That's part of, growing up with a twin brother. You compete at breathing. The competition's great, but you have to be able to pull, beneficial things from it. How did this help you manage your time better? And I think that's one of the struggles that these competitions have, is that you're doing all these things for a purpose in the moment. At the end of the day, when it's gone, when that motivation is gone, and when that external motivation, the external rewards are gone, a lot of people are left with nothing. And that's the struggle. In CrossFit in general, what we were talking about this the other day, has this community base. And you're paying for the experience, community, the relationships, but what happens when someone falls on some financial hardship and can no longer pay or meet it, because from what you said, it's apparently pretty expensive. If you can't meet that again, it's like, hey, I can't compete with you all anymore. Are we not friends? Can I not go to the gym? And that's where I see the struggle. It's you didn't develop that community before the competition, or if you did it just because of the competition, as soon as the competition's gone or over, as soon as you can't afford that, then the community might falter as well. And again, these are all maybes, but these are the things I question people on. And if they have good answers, great. I can't prove. You just have to be able to have that compelling, good reason to do it.
Yeah, and I think you're touching on something very crucial there, which is that if you are goal-driven and never looking past it, you're going to fall off the wagon. And I've done that in my own life, right? So I was the 40 pounds overweight smoking fat kid for a while. And then I kind of got into some competitive things, but as soon as I didn't have a competition out in front of me, I would stop training. Like, why would I put myself through all that if there's not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? And that's changed over time, mostly because I'm addicted to the competition. I just keep going back. But also I've become conscious of it. So what you're working toward is raising that consciousness of knowing that, yeah, fine, train for a goal, train for a competition, but also be aware that you should be taking more out of that than your finisher's medal or than your photo on the podium. Let's get into brass tacks on this a little bit. So we're kind of working in the esoteric realm right now. Let's come down to how strong is strong enough? How do you approach strength training for fitness for life?
I just brought this up because I'm teaching a coaching class right now, and one of my classes I'm coaching is I give them principles and strategies to teach in their sport, not in I'm not forcing them into a team sport. So I have an athlete right now who is a pole vaulter, and he's going to be a pole vaulting coach, and he was talking about one of the projects I have in my class is developing a plan to get an athlete from the first day to the first competition, and setting up what skills are within that, what strategies are within this, and then how do you develop drills and activities to get your athletes to a level of competition by that first competition. So because of that, he's looking at the skills that make a pole vaulter successful, and then strength clearly need a certain degree of strength. But the struggle for him was, he looked personally and thought, well, right now my coaches just put me in some generic strength development plan, and he's like, but I don't want to do those stuff. I don't want to gain that amount of strength. At a university, and maybe a small mid-major D1 university, which will go unnamed, puts a lot of their resources into primary sports. And their staff and their resources are all limited. They don't have time to individualize types of training that it takes for people to really learn what their body needs, genetically, physiologically, and competitive-based. So I'd start off by saying there's a blend between those three. He's in a program where let's develop strength. It's easy. I'm doing football. Football's my main priority. The coach is saying this, but we got this pole vaulter. He's under my umbrage. Well, we'll just have them do some of these things, a little variations. It's not his style. You know what I mean? In cycling, this, that it's all about strength to weight, and pole vaulting is strength to weight. In cycling, we normally use power to weight. And how you can become a more successful cyclist by losing 10 pounds than you can trying to train that difference in performance, right? So it's the same thing with pole vaulters. You have to find that sweet spot. You have to find, based on his genetics, based on his, percentage of type 1, type 2, his physiology, you have to say, how much strength do you need before you have to say, well, I gained all this strength because that's my coach wanted. Now I need more strength to lift myself up 18 feet in the air. And now I need more strength to do that, so I have to gain more strength. Now I weigh more, so I need more strength. And where does it end? So I think there needs to be a way to find that sweet spot, and I think there is a sweet spot for everybody, but I think it just takes time. And again, you can't be in a hurry, which is, every competition has a deadline. Finding that sweet spot, maybe if I wanted to keep it simple, is, you asked me, the question is, how do you find out how much strength? And if there's a competition, there's got to be a sweet spot for you. It can't just be, let's just get bigger, faster, stronger.
Right, unless you're like a barbell athlete, and then it's literally just get as strong as you freakishly can.
Exactly.
But even then,
Exactly.
There's weight classes, right? Unless you're a super heavyweight, you got to make your way in. You can't just have quads the size of tree trunks. You have to stay within a certain body type almost. We'll turn the corner just slightly. How athletic is athletic enough? So strength is one thing. Athleticism is something entirely different, and there's a whole raging side debate we could get into over what athleticism really is. But
Sure.
Training for strength and training for athleticism don't necessarily look the same, and training for athleticism, I think, can take on a lot more broad domains. So is there a ratio that you would look for somebody who's not a collegiate athlete, just some schmuck like myself who's trying to make their way in the world? How much time do you spend developing athleticism?
It's hard for me. I wouldn't say I'm scientific enough. I haven't done enough research specifically or been in touch with enough research, reviewed enough research, if you will, to pinpoint that exact number or answer. So, and again, with I've got to keep on my philosophy with the lifestyle perspective. It comes back to functional, and it's very cliche, but the word functional for me goes back to the definition of physical fitness, the body's ability to function effectively and efficiently. And to me, those two words, you take athleticism and determine what is functional for you, and then find out what is effective. If you had your body weight, your strength, what levels of those do you need to say, I can work effectively? I can get out of a burning building, or I'm the person to be able to run in. I need enough strength to run in and grab some more people, right? I had this discussion with my cousin, and he's maybe an inch taller and easily 80, 90 pounds more solid muscle. And again, if people are looking on the podcast, I'm easily $140, 5'10", like the wind blows me over. So seeing us next to each other, I'm having a conversation. I had a pretty similar conversation with him. It's like, I will never need his level of strength. And he goes, you're right. I'm going to be, he made the joke. He's like, I'm going to be dragging you out of a burning building. I said, no, I would have been out 10 minutes ago. I'm light on my feet, right? And I'll be calling the police or the ambulance or the fire truck while he's running in and carrying people out. And for him, that's functional. Take an athlete, if you bring that into athleticism, now you have a certain degree of the competition, and now you're usually, when it comes to athleticism, people are using that function for a purpose. And it's usually some sort of competition or for a reason that's beyond life, in a way, right? It can attribute, and it can be applicable to life, which is kind of the purpose. But I think people really need to dial in the difference. And I think that it's dangerous to go down this athletic-only route or this sports-only route, and without looking at the fact of what am I doing for the rest of my life, or do I need to spend so much more time to get this a little bit better? When I'm pretty good right now, I can function efficiently and effectively, but if I can apply it to sports, I'm competent, maybe not the best. And so for me, it's, again, maybe it brings back to that sweet spot. It's hard to pinpoint an exact number or amount of time or find a way to split. And that's the human element to me. That's why it's like every human has a different reason for doing something. I mean, you go out and ride a bike, I go out and ride a bike, you're athletic, I'm athletic. We're looking at different purposes for that athleticism. And so I think that's what people overlook. They grab that 30-day box, fitness in a box, and they say, this is going to work for me. And it may fail miserably for them, but for the wrong reasons. They think, oh, it's because they didn't have time. And it's like, there are so many other variables that you have no control of, or that you didn't know you need help with. I mean, it's so personal. I mean, it's so human and so independent and individual. I mean, you go on from there.
The things you weren't prepared to deal with category, I think, is a big stumbling block for people who are first coming into fitness, right? So I have had people come into coaching scenarios with me, and they want to get fit. Their buddy joined a CrossFit gym, and they got super fit in like 2 months, and now they're just complete crazy rage machines every time they set foot in the box, and good for them. But then they come in, and they can't squat at all. Like, not that their squat needs work. They physically cannot reach any sort of mechanical depth on a squat because they have ankle mobility limitations, or their spine just doesn't move at all, or anything. A lot like me when I started. So they can't expect to get really much of anywhere with, like, say, a body composition goal, when the first thing we have to do is get the machine to move again. We've got to spray WD-40 all over it and blast it with a wire brush just to get the thing to move. So, you're not going to be able to, I can't put somebody under an intense metabolic demand when they can't move, because that's just asking for an injury. And then they're going to be set further back even than they were before. I think it's interesting what you were saying also about how your level of fitness that you need is going to be different for everyone. It's like anything in training, right? You start at the goal and work backwards. So if you start at the goal of being able to carry people out of a burning building, well, that's going to require a certain set of physical skills and capabilities. If your goal is to be able to get up off the couch without assistance when you're 75, well, then that's going to look a little bit different, and you can work toward that with a measured approach, and you have lots and lots of time to get that done, assuming that you're not already 72. It reminds me a lot. Have you read Chris McDougall's books, Born to Run, and it's escaping me?
Oh, the second one, yeah. I can't think
Natural Born Hero.
Yeah, yes, I have.
Yeah, those two books changed my perspective on a whole bunch of things, but the Natural Born Hero, the Greek philosophy of be strong to be not a burden and then be strong to be useful, really changed how I look at programming for what we affectionately call the general population. And like you were saying, I want everybody to be as strong as they ever want to be, but I first want them to be strong, mobile, agile, be able to move their body in space so that they're not a burden and so that they are useful. If we have to carry a bunch of stuff, if I have to sprint out into the street to grab a kid before it gets smacked by a truck, I want to be able to do that with no question as to my physical capability. If you need to carry a refrigerator or put new beams under your house, then you want to be able to do that without ever having to worry about whether you've put in enough strength work to do it. So it's a hard one to nail down. It's not like a couch to 5K. No, it doesn't have that structured, and that's where I get back to my 60-year plan. Like, you get into, you called it the box, I assume that is the club, is that right? So you go in, but there's that culture. The people that are already there have this mindset that we did this, and there's time limits, and everything's a race, and I got this level in the competition, and even if it's not a larger competition, but basically every weekend there's a club-wide challenge, right? And so they get in and they want to hit the ground running so fast, and it's like, no, like you said, like we want to make you walk before you do anything. And let's make sure you can walk with proper form so you don't develop injuries or imbalances. One of the most successful weight loss programs in the world that you've never heard of was out of Central Michigan University. They'd take the most morbidly obese people, and they basically have them, the first step is, can you move, right? And then it's, can you move for 30 minutes? And then it's, can you move for 30 minutes 7 days a week? Not 3 to 5 days, not, you know what I mean? Can you,
because now you're building in time management, and you're seeing what kind of priorities you have, right? And it's not saying you have to do this or else. It's if you can't do this by week 4, if you can't show us that you just can move 7 days a week for at least 30 minutes, you're not in the program.
Right.
Because there's nothing else we can do to motivate you. And then can you walk at a certain pace for 30 minutes, 7 days a week? Then can you walk 60 minutes? I mean, these programs take 5 years. And it's like, whoa, you're not going to get sponsorships or marketing, or you're not going to win anything from a 5-year plan. But they're one of the only programs that doesn't fall into that 90% rule, where 90% of people gain it back within the first year. So they had one of the highest non-return to original state ratios that was ever out there. And it's because they weren't in a hurry. There's no plan. It's life. It's bring this into your life. If you can walk for 30 minutes, then you have time to move. I can kind of relate it to what you're saying with how do you define function and fitness for everybody. And my stance has slowly turned into, it came down to what they wanted to do in their life. And if you don't develop the skills and the time in the program, then what the short answer is you're going to go back to what you were before you started it.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And if you're not making any changes beyond the numbers and the stats with the body size, with measurements, circumferences, if you're not making any change into the life that you do that surround that, then there's not going to be a long-term consequence.
You have to change the mind before you change the body, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that I always beat my head against, because as a coach or an instructor, changing minds is really hard, if not impossible, in a lot of cases. People walk into your facility or my facility or wherever we're trying to work, and they have a certain idea of what fitness should look like, of what it's going to look like for them to get from where they are to where they want to be. And persuading them that it's going to take a lot longer and be a lot less glamorous, and it's going to be terrible television the whole time, it doesn't sell very well. And especially when all of the marketing messages out there for the last 100 years have been that 45-day challenge, right? They've been that, come to my gym for 6 weeks and you'll be down 4 pant sizes, but you're not going to learn anything. You're just going to follow the steps blindly, and it may work, but then do you have any skills to carry you past the end of that? And one of the things that we just put out a podcast today about a documentary called The Motivation Factor. It was about that program in the 1960s or 1950s and 60s at La Sierra High School. You've probably seen the trailer all over Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the PE program that would destroy every single person at the CrossFit Games today, probably.
Oh, yeah, no, that was, just from teaching phys ed for so long, I've used that in some of my classes.
And it's astonishing, but one of the things that came up in that interview was they borrowed from ancient Greece for their models for physical education. Mm-hmm. It was not sport-driven. So a lot of physical education today, a lot of training today, even for adults, happens from the perspective of sport training, right? We want to make better basketball players, so we're going to play basketball in gym class. We want to make better football players, so we're just going to back squat terribly all the time when we're doing strength and conditioning. So right. How do we get back to that, to general physical skills and teaching people how to be in their bodies again?
And so now you're tapping into my physical education roots. So that's where my primary background is in. I've got a master's in pedagogy, how to teach phys ed. I'm working on my doctorate right now in educational technology within physical education. My bachelor's is in physical education and outdoor education. And that's where my goal as a physical education teacher, as a professor of physical education, is to put every personal trainer out of business. I'll just leave it. Let that sink in a little bit. Let it simmer, let it marinate, right? And it's as bad as that sounds, and it's hard to think if I was ever a personal trainer, it's hard to think, well, would I prepare this person to do this for the rest of their life, or am I preparing them to do it for 6 months, knowing that they'll be right back 2 months after that when they haven't been able to sustain it on their own? And so as a phys ed teacher, I want to put every personal trainer out of business, and that's the mentality that you can prepare students to move and to live and develop an appreciation and the skills so that they can select what they're doing. That's it in a nutshell, right? Phys ed does have the root in sports, but again, you said go back into Greece. It came the Greeks and Romans, and it started its roots in competition and then living a healthy body, healthy mind. And then you get back in the Germans, the Swedes come in, and then they start, bringing in gymnastics, and that's where you get gym out of gymnasium, and then gym, people call it phys ed, instead of they saying phys ed or phy ed, they'll say gym class, but it's not because of the gymnasium, it's because of gymnastics. At least that's how I sleep at night. And anyway, then you see in the early 1900s that there's this medical aspect of, wait, this is making us better. For females, they thought it was killing them, and they said, don't bring your heart rate over 120. For every beat you have now, it's one beat less that you'll have for the rest of your life. So it's funny the things they thought back then. But as medical changed, then it turned into, as medicine changed, then it came into, let's, build this aura of health. Then it started you seeing it in schools because that's the best place to teach people things. Well, then came wars, and then the 60s, and now there's this emphasis on fitness, preparing them for battle, preparing our future. And then now we're in position the main focus is on fitness again, but I think we're ruining the outlook on fitness because of what we think physical education should be doing. And, there's those teachers that go out and roll out the ball. And next thing you know, what are the people learning in that? Where's the motivation? What did you learn that you can take up for the rest of your life from these programs? I would call that gym class, because what's actually learning? But physical education, as it should be rooted in the blend of fitness to prepare them with the skills and knowledge to do it for the rest of their life. The attitudes, the affective or the affective domain that says, I enjoy this, I can see how it's making me better. But you're not all going to do that by playing basketball and volleyball and flag football. Sorry for all those industries. They're all going down if you look at youth sports data. But, we're still teaching them the wrong way, and we're hoping that they can just absorb these skills. And that's the challenge with physical education. They don't really know we don't know who we are right now. Are we sports? Are we motor development? Are we motor learning? Are we fitness? And the problem is we're definitely all of them. But because of the obesity epidemic, because of fitness measurements, because of sports skills and youth sports, everyone's pulling at them saying, we'll give you money if you say this. We'll give you money if you bring in, play 360 or play 60. And you know what I mean? If you bring in more recess instead of actual physical education where they're just running around crazy, we'll give you thousands of dollars. Well, okay, let's drop phys ed for this because we're getting paid for this. So it's, you just opened a can of worms there bringing up phys ed. I'll try to stay out of that, but it's depressing. Physical education is one of the only preventative medicines to the obesity epidemic. What else is preventative, right? Everything in the health industry is treating the symptoms, not the cause.
Lean pockets are going to save us all.
Yeah. See, for me, I call that job security, as bad as that sounds, but it's keeping us all in business. And unfortunately, I don't get paid if I was in the medical field, I would. Because I try, in phys ed, it's like, here's all this stuff, go out and use it and put all these people out of business, right? Then you don't need you shouldn't need as much medicine. You won't have as many injuries and illnesses. You name it. Physical education, if they know their bodies, they know how to move, they've developed appropriately, and they can work both sides of their brain, and they can walk down the street and maintain balance and coordination. They can pick up a racket and know how to use it, or they can pick up a different thing, right? Then they're going to be set for life. But we keep using this team sports where, and again, I'm a team sports guy. I can play any team sport under the sun. But it's because I have a breadth of knowledge. I can do lots of different things. And that's a physically educated person. It's not someone who can just play games. The first team sport in the top 10, if you do the research, and I think this was Retail Sports Association, the first, in terms of participation, the first team sport in the top 10, what do you think it is for activity level?
Soccer, probably?
This is America, man. This isn't the rest of the world.
I was thinking soccer, but yeah.
Yeah, in the U.S. it's basketball. Everything else is an individual sport. Running, walking, jogging, those types of sports, swimming, individual, maybe dual sports. And so I think we just as a country have our priorities malaligned, if you ask me.
Well, if you ask a bunch of kids who have sat in front of an Xbox for the first 15 years of their life to go out and play flag football, you're asking them to do advanced calculus when they can't do basic arithmetic, right? You have a kid who hasn't mastered depending on who you ask, the 6 or 7 basic fundamental human movements, push, pull, jump, run, squat, whatever. They can't do any of those things at all. Like they cannot do them without hurting themselves. And you're going to just hand them a ball and ask them to go play something as dynamic and challenging to the physical machine as flag football. Of course it's a recipe for a disaster. They're not going to have fun. They're going to get blown up, and they're going to get hurt, and then they're going to think, not without reason, that physical activity is terrible, because every time they go do it...
Who would want to do that?
Yeah, who would want to? Yeah, exactly. Who would want to do that? And of course, when you and I were in gym class in middle school and high school, it was like line dancing and all kinds of freaking terribleness, depending on which school you're at.
Yep.
But one of the things you said I think deserves more attention. Your whole stance as a physical educator is to put personal trainers out of business. And you said that kind of backpedaling, but I think that any personal trainer, I should say, who is worth anything is trying to put themselves out of business. Their job is still physical education. Their job is still to train their clients up to the point where they become self-sufficient. And I've told people this that I train that, look, I don't want you to pay me forever. If I do my job, and depending on where you come in and where you're trying to go, if I do my job, we should only be talking for a year at most, because that's the extent of my knowledge. That's all I have. So if I convey it in an effective way and you retain it, then I should be out of things to say to you after about a year. Now, there are a whole bunch of caveats and what-ifs to that, right? Like if you miss a few weeks,
a lot of variables.
You get hurt, or you're starting out with a whole bunch of mobility problems or physical deficiencies, then yeah, it's going to be a lot longer than that. But I would never want a client for life as a personal trainer, as a CrossFit coach, as a running coach, because that means I haven't taught you anything. And it gets boring. Like, I don't want to teach the same things over and over again.
No, that's great. I just thought of a good analogy. Your personal trainers are like the weathermen of the fitness industry, right? You can lie every day or be wrong every day, and it's like, weather's unpredictable, right? In the fitness, or as a personal trainer, you exactly said it. If you're terrible, they're going to need to keep coming back, right? The worse you are, the more they need you. It's like, there's this weird, catch-22 or whatever the cliche can be, that you're exactly right. If the better you do, the less they should need you.
I don't want to beat on personal trainers too much, right? This is a problem across industries, and there are fabulous personal trainers as much as there are terrible personal trainers. But it's the same thing in healthcare. Our doctors don't teach people how to manage their own health, largely because they have no physical education background.
So yeah, it's an interesting perspective to try and connect that to meeting the needs of your client versus preparing. Maybe like you said, there's variables, but there's also clients that need that motivation. They need that external stimulus. They need someone to drive them, and so that's something. Certainly you're right. We don't need to downplay the role of personal trainers, but at the same time, I hope every personal trainer looks inside and says, am I doing this for the right reasons and doing it the right way? I think and that's kind of what I mentioned earlier, is you've got to be able to look inside and say, what are we doing and why are we doing it?
Absolutely. It's like if you went to a dentist and he wanted to see you every week to clean your teeth, you would fire that dentist, because he should be teaching you whatever it is that you need, that you don't have to have your teeth cleaned by someone else once a week. It would be insane.
You might edit this out, but I literally said that to my dentist 2 weeks ago. I'm not even joking. I seriously said, wait a minute, how often do I have to come here?
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, the more I do come here, the more you get paid, so why aren't you, messing up my teeth right now?
Yeah, it's a weird industry. So one of the things you touched on a minute ago, and I took a note because I wanted to come back to it, is if your financial situation changes and you can't afford to go to your CrossFit box or your Soul Cycle class or your yoga studio or whatever it is that you're doing to maintain yourself physically.
Or even sacrificing for, not just a payment. It doesn't have to be monetary. It could be if you're sacrificing an hour of your night, whatever, and then you have a kid, you can't sacrifice that hour anymore, yeah.
Well, and you and I have both been there, right? Your life circumstances change, and you can't put in 5,000 years or 5,000 miles on the bike every year anymore. So your cycling fitness falls off. You have to make those adjustments. But the affluence thing, the monetary thing, is particularly challenging in America because there is a direct link between poverty and obesity here for a whole bunch of reasons, but not least of which is the fact that you have to pay to get fit. In America, you have to go pay sometimes a whole bunch of money to maintain your body. And one of the ways that I think that we change that is an effective physical education program. But the thing that got us started talking about this before we ever decided to sit down for an episode of the podcast was somebody donating an ungodly amount of money for a scoreboard at a football stadium in the same city where they destroyed the PE program.
Yeah, they took PE out of the city. The local school district took PE out of the schools, replaced it with some after-school program. No emphasis on development, learning, application of the skills, correctly teaching them to perform, who have their body perform in different ways, what physical education really is, not just hitting the ball and things like that. They took it out of the district, yet some anonymous donor, instead of keeping phys ed alive for probably 5 years, $10 million could probably, unfortunately, pay some serious salaries for phys ed teachers, let's be honest, for a long time. And they were anonymous about it. And it's like, why not proudly give that to something that is useful? I don't know.
That would create an
actual... Yeah, you don't want to open the can of worms that I've got for college athletics. But it all comes down to, my philosophy is you know exactly what I'd say already, right? I mean, it's just, are we equipping them with things to do for the rest of their life? Or are we putting them in a hole to where they're going to have to do so much to overcome that?
What tools do we have now to fix this problem, right? If you're the struggling single mother of 3 kids and you're working 2 jobs 60 hours a week, what do if you're trying to stay any kind of healthy? Like, you don't have any prayer of, well, maybe you do, because people are incredible sometimes, but you probably don't have any chance of being like a competitive athlete. You're just trying to not die. Like, what tools do we have for people who are in that scenario?
It's not necessarily the tools. It's who is teaching people to use those tools. Maybe, right? Let me see if I say this right. Because the tools are there. Phys ed teachers are there. Personal trainers are there. Fitness professionals are there. Coaches are there. Everybody's there. But are they equipping the people who need the tools or are using the tools? Are you teaching them how to use the tools appropriately? Right? Because, time management is something you just have to learn. That's the tool. It's not like you have to buy time management or go out to the store and get it, right? But someone needs to teach you how to manage it. And for me, and this is all, everything I say is controversial. I love it. But for me, it's that lifestyle, right? You have to go to the gym to overcome how your lifestyle is. Think about that, right? So if you want to you talked about athleticism and performance, you could look back at your lifestyle and say, you know what, you're right. Because of my lifestyle, and this might be a stretch, but I'm not throwing rocks and boulders and moving and creating a house like I used to, when I was primal. But at the same time, why can't we just run a study at how much smaller as human beings we are than our ancestors, on how we're small, like everything about us, we're adapting to not moving anymore. And that's the problem. The tools are there. People have the tools. It comes down to the choice to use them. It's, does your coach, trainer, personal trainer, phys ed teacher know enough to motivate you and teach you and train you how to use those time management skills to maintain it, right? You said mother of 3 and all these kinds of things. It's like any mother of 3 with an active lifestyle, and I shouldn't say any, because now, that might put me in a place, but a mother of 3 does have the ability to be actively involved with their children in a way that, anything you do can be done outside. Anything you can do can involve movement and activity. If you can teach them how to, eat and bring in nutrition, that's one topic we haven't talked about yet. That's certainly important. But if you bring that into it, there's so much. There's tools out there already. It's just, how do we get people to do it? Where's the accountability? And I swear that so many people in this life do so much in the fitness center, in the gym, wherever, just because they're overcoming for their lifestyle. When at the end of the day, if you would just change your lifestyle, you wouldn't need it. You know what I mean? If you weren't sitting on the couch playing games, eating ice cream, sitting there, if your job, right? Again, this is all theoretical, but if your job is sitting in front of a computer all day, that's still a choice in a weird way. It's still a choice, and your lifestyle does not help you. So you have to overcome your lifestyle. So, yeah, I think the tools are there. I think it's just teaching people how to use them and holding them accountable. And that's what I think people pay for. When you talk more about bringing it back to the finances, people aren't usually paying for the knowledge. I'm paying for someone to say, how to go today. Are you getting better, right? Assess them. Here's what you need to do next. So you're paying not necessarily for the knowledge, you're paying for the accountability.
Yeah, it's a strange thing in a time where almost all human knowledge is free, aside from studies that haven't quite reached the. It's incredible the amount of knowledge that's out there. 95% probably of my education in all things physical has been just literally Googling it, like just reading studies and watching videos and attending seminars that were free and just going and soaking up information until it sort of started to coalesce. I'm the opposite of you, right? So you were an athlete growing up and went straight to college and learned more about physical fitness and health and development there. To me, that's become an advantage, right? Because I went through that long period of time where I was horribly unfit. You saw it. You were there. Then, kind of got addicted to bicycles and kind of just started trying stuff and went too hard and got hurt and had to start over and went through that whole sort of painful life education route, which takes a lot longer, and I probably ended up costing me more money than a college degree would have by the time I was done having reconstructive knee surgery and everything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so but the point is it can be done. It can be done for very little money. The first thing is that people have to want to do it.
Yeah.
Sort of on their own. If you don't have the resources to pay somebody to cook your meals and write your workout plans and drive you to the gym and all of the niceties that we all wish we had, and you can't take 12 hours a week off of your job to go train, then you're going to have to want it. You're going to have to make sacrifices and go out and chase it yourself. And it sucks, and I hate it every day, but that's the alternative is to fall apart, and that's not okay with me.
It's funny. All these things are just coming back in my mind like, oh, man, they're deep, because you talk about what is the incentive for them to do it. And I don't want to get political, but unfortunately, there is no incentive to be active right now, right?
No.
The money that I've saved being active and healthy has not shown up anywhere because, and again, I don't want to get political with politics and healthcare and those kinds of things, but at the same time, the way our structure is right now, there's no negative incentive or disincentive to be not active. Yes, you might be sick and whatever, but it's like there's a pill for that. Or I can't do this myself, but I can pay with subsidies and money and those kinds of things for healthcare support, for resources, for health services, those kinds of things. I can get money for those. And unfortunately, we're in this kind of bubble where we've taken out the natural consequence.
Right.
You see what I mean by that? We've taken out, if you're not active, I mean, sure, there's still a consequence there, right? Nobody wants to be an asthmatic. No one wants to have to carry around all that extra weight and not be able to enjoy the foods they can because they're constantly in a diet. Nobody wants that. But at the same time, we have to have we need to motivate the people before they get to that point.
We talk about removing the consequences of not taking care of yourself. Let's follow that train all the way through, right? So you grow up being told to eat anything you want, and you do, and you become an adult and you don't like working out, so you don't. And you continue to do everything you want, and then by the time you're 30, you're fat, sick, and mostly dead and sitting on a couch, and all of your joints start to hurt. So you go to the doctor, and the doctor prescribes you an opiate painkiller, and your opiate painkiller makes you just a complete space cadet, and you can't go to work.
They give you too many extra opiate painkillers is what we're learning now. But, yeah, keep going.
I mean, as few as, 4 or 6 are enough to start an addictive, depending on your epigenetics and all that sort of thing. Anyway, So now you're on painkillers and you lose your job because you're a space cadet and you stay at home and you just keep eating Cheetos because now you're broke and that's all you can really afford. So now we're going to send you a hover round for free because you physically can't walk. Like everything in our social construct, and this is regardless of politics, this is the reality of the situation. Everything in our social construct encourages you to sit down, sit still, don't move, and we're going to take care of you with pills and equipment when you cannot physically take care of yourself anymore. Hover rounds are free. In-home personal training is not. That's all you need to know.
And you can't take anything away from the individual. Like we're not placing a focus on. We're not saying everybody should be able to make these decisions. That's not it. We're saying the structure, the system, the community around these are not supporting the right things. I think is what we're trying to say here.
Yeah, we're disincentivizing good choices and then incentivizing bad choices.
Exactly. Yeah, and again, you have to follow the money, and that's crazy. So, yeah, let me go back to when you mentioned how growing up as an athlete, being exposed to sports, and the more I looked back, the more I almost don't want to credit my coaches for where I am. One, because I was a football player, and I blame my coach. I found I was working through some old paperwork at the house a couple weekends ago, and I found an old article of me my freshman year in the paper. You know how when they do like profiles, team profiles every football season, so they had every position and their weights and heights and all this kind of stuff. So I found one for my freshman year. I was 5'3", 100 pounds.
Yep.
Think about that.
Yep.
And I played varsity a couple games my freshman year. I was a 4-year letter winner in football my freshman year, right? My entire college career, or my entire high school career, I was a 4-year letter winner in football. That's a problem. So I kind of blame my coaches because I read an article. I had a friend who, we were both skinny guys. We had about the same body type. And I read an article about muscle fiber type and how your genetic propensity to be type 1, type 2. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at me. I'll be in the weight room for months, and as a wrestler for football, I'm lifting just like everybody else, a lot less weight, but I'm not putting on bulk. Like, I'm not getting big. Nothing I could do. I could walk. I tell this to my students. I could walk on my calves for the next 2 years, and my calves wouldn't be any bigger than this chair leg. And that's my genetic makeup. So I read this article, luckily, in high school, and from then on, I stopped working out. I'm like, this is stupid. I started running cross country on Saturday mornings, and I'd play football the night before. And I was the #1 runner, and I never practiced in cross country. I never went to the practices. I'd just show up on Saturdays, run with the A team, see you later, then go to the football practice and run around. Like, that's all I did was run at football, and it was fun. I never got the ball thrown to me for a lot of reasons. I'd say that I was a wide blocker because every time I'd run out there and block, I never got the ball. I mean, look, I was 5'3". Who's going to throw this kid a ball? So I would just run.
Hell, what are you blocking at 105 pounds? Like, with your helmet on? You're
nothing.
You're not blocking
you see pictures of me. I'm like the little giants. I mean, it's hilarious. So, but I look at, so I don't want to give any credit to the coaches I've had, because no one shook me and said, you're not a football player. I mean, they did encourage me, and they obviously supported me, so those are really good things. And they didn't tell me I was an idiot. They said, we'll support what you want to do, and, my parents too. But I think what I look back to my childhood is how active we were. There wasn't one day we sat down to just hang out. We were active every day, and then with my level of competition, I had to be active and be better than everybody. So you could put in any sport you want, and it's like, well, okay, put a racket in my hand. Okay, well, I can learn how to do this, and then I'll try and do it better than you. So it's definitely perspective. But I look back and I wish I knew what I know now back then in terms of how I trained. Just stuff I mentioned earlier about the pole vaulter, right? If someone had trained me based on my genetics, based on my needs and my application to a sport or athletic endeavor at that time, who knows what kind of athlete I'd be? If someone said, listen, Ben, quit wasting your time in the weight room and trying to catch footballs. Why not you train as an endurance athlete? I mean, think of where I'd be right now, right? I mean, I credit them because they're great people, but I kind of wish that my background was more individualized and specific. And I think that's the struggle we see with our youth sports nowadays. It's like everyone play, like you said earlier, everyone play football. And we're like, well, I never get the ball. Okay, well, everyone play flag football. Okay, well, everyone play this. So, like, you just keep going from sport to sport to sport and hope it catches on, and people are starting to think that, like, no, this isn't fun anymore.
It's interesting to hear your perspective on your background as a youth athlete versus mine, because I wrestled for a few years and just got my clock cleaned, right? Because that was the only athletic thing I ever did until I was like 29. Literally, I had 3 years of wrestling and just got wiped all over the flipping mat. My freshman year, I was a 112. Like, I was essentially the same size as you.
Yeah.
But what I took out of it was almost entirely positive, because I was taught so many lessons in like mental toughness and tenacity and how to actually be aggressive and use your body and things like that. And not to say I wasn't running up and down the hallway in trash cans before tournaments or trash bags, and to make weight. That stuff happened too, and that's not really positive. But I learned how far I could push myself. I learned that
that's a good point.
Burning muscles can be ignored for a long time. But now that I'm a runner as an adult, and I'm getting halfway decent at it with what I've got to work with my old broken body, I wonder, like you, if I had been selected by someone with a keen eye to develop in that way as a kid and had been taught to properly move and properly run, because I never learned to run until I was almost 30. Like, I was never taught. It's a skill, right? And everybody thinks, oh, you just go run. But like anything else, anytime you're moving your body in space, because we don't do it naturally, to go back to your point before, everything that we do to train physically is to overcome something in our life that we're not taking care of.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I could take the same thing. My wrestling coach, I think, is the one who made me an endurance athlete. We did more running through the hallways of the school.
Oh, God, yeah.
Right? But that goes back to, I thought it was the greatest thing. Our volleyball coach, when I coached collegiate volleyball, the coach said, stop lifting weights. Wait, no, sorry, I'll take that back. Edit that back out. He didn't say stop lifting weights. He said stop lifting them that strong and stop running. So stop lifting weights to gain strength, right? We need explosive power, not just bulk. So he said stop lifting weights that way. And then they said no more wind sprints, no more condition, no more long-distance endurance. He wanted to develop that he didn't need to do the cardiovascular system, because with the longest play in volleyball is maybe a minute. But look at every volleyball program in America. And everyone's doing sprints, down and backs, running laps, running around the court. And there's such this disconnect between what are we really training, right? These volleyball athletes are getting too much strength, and now they're not jumping as high because now they weigh so much more, or they're running so much that they're developing those muscles to use energy in the aerobic system and use oxygen, as opposed to how much energy can you store so you can be explosive, and repetitive, and how fast can you recover so that you can explode again 2 seconds later when the ball comes right back to you because it's blocked in your face. So I don't know how we got there, but man, yeah, it's fascinating when you can connect the type of activity you need for the person you are, for the activity, and just bring everything together and make it more individualized. I think that's the key. And the problem is no one has time for that, right? No one wants to make time for that. It's like we need to spend so much time on individual athletes and do real, true individual training, not just say, okay, well, based on this, you fit into this characteristic. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily that. It's look at their whole life, their lifestyle, and say, I need to train you as a person, not you fit into this type of runner. Let's do A, B, C, and D because this is what this type of runners are supposed to do. It's like, no, maybe let's start there, but how do we need to tweak it for you and your individual physiology?
Well, and that's sort of one of the challenges. I'm not going to call it a problem. One of the challenges of tying academics to sports, right? There's a whole bunch of problems, but the problem, the biggest problem with athletic development as it is tied to academics is the limited number of bodies we can devote to it, right? So Chris Holder, Dr. Holder, is one of our writers at Breaking Muscle. He works for Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and he's a brilliant coach. But he's one guy, and he is the only strength and conditioning coordinator for the entire university. He writes the strength programs, the strength and speed programs, actually, for every single team. That's insane, and he works very hard. The guy puts in an astonishing number of hours.
That's not even fair.
But he's, I mean, how do you can't individualize at that. Like, you try, and you're going to get to know some athletes and their needs just over the course of a season, but there's no way you could reach the level of granularity that you and I are talking about to actually address everyone's needs on an individual basis. The way you do that is not by hiring more coaches, ironically. The way you do that is rewind the tape 5 years or 10 years and start them in an effective physical education program to where they can select their own modes and coach themselves to a large degree through 95% of what their training is going to require.
Yeah, that coach shouldn't have to develop it from everybody. He should be able to tweak it, and then his job's a lot easier, right? But then again, you need less coaches, you need less trainers. You're affecting. It's like making cars that don't need any repairs. That'll never happen. People have got to, mechanics got to get food on the table. So,
well, to a large extent, it is happening, though, and that's what's kind of funny about the automotive industry is we've got all these 100,000-mile warranties now. When you and I first started driving, no car went 100, just nobody's. You had that one weird friend with the Volkswagen that went 240,000 miles, but he was a freak, and everyone else's cars were dead at 95,000 miles. And now, my truck's getting ready to roll over 200,000, and I don't expect it to stop anytime soon.
Well, hold on. Do you want to keep the analogy going? Because what did we do? How did we equip those cars? Right? How did we keep the car industry up to date with the changes, and how did we prepare that vehicle to last that long?
Well, we made the cars last.
We're not preparing humans to last that long.
Right. Yeah, we're not making people any smarter the way we made cars smarter.
Exactly. This is the first generation. Based on projections, the first 200-year-old person has been born. Think about that. Okay,
right.
Based on progressions and projections, the first 200-year-old person has been born. At the same time, we are the first generation to have a lower life expectancy than our generation before us in the history of mankind.
And if we're going to go down the statistics rabbit hole, there was just a study came out not that long ago that found that the average level of daily physical activity for 16-year-olds today is the same as 60-year-olds.
Yeah.
Teenagers and retirees move about the same. How bizarre is that? And then we wonder why we're going to have all these problems. And we wonder why our test scores are falling off. We wonder why we're not producing the same number of engineers and doctors and nuclear physicists that we used to. It's pretty obvious to us, right?
Treating symptoms, man.
Yeah.
Treating symptoms.
Okay, so let's back out a little bit again.
Okay.
If we're teaching people that there's no hurry, and you want to be fit for life,
60-year plan.
You don't need to do all this crazy strength training. Stop it with your freaking periodized barbell back squats that you're just going to sit at a desk all day. How does psychology and adherence come into this? Because we all know that adherence is the number one predictor of any success, right?
Mhm.
So
You got to keep doing it.
you got to keep doing it. How do we package this 60-year plan in such a way that people actually stick to it for 60 years? Because I got to tell you, I'm bored out of my mind just listening to it. How do you market a 60-year plan to people who, psychologically you're only looking at the next 6 months of your life?
Yeah, and that's part of why I play the why game, and it's why do that, why, and see how many levels of why you can go until finally there's a compelling reason, and that's just kind of a trick to get to what's a real priority in your life. And people like, in college, the cliche is our fitness center gets packed right around December, January, February, spring break. Right? And so it's why do I want to be bigger, faster, stronger? Well, because I want to look better. Why do you want to look better? Well, because you don't like the way you look? You know what I mean? Well, there's strategies for that don't involve weights. You know what I mean? Getting them to analyze really what their priorities in life, I think, is where you start with that 60-year plan. Letting them know that, yeah, we'll have benchmarks along the way, but we can stay at one benchmark and one level for 10 years. So make a small change here. Make a small change there. Make a small change there. If you want to be active, okay, go walk for 5 minutes today. Is that more than yesterday? Great. Do that for 5 weeks. Do that for 5. Why can't you do that for 5 weeks?
It's boring.
I don't know.
But
exactly.
It's boring.
You're talking about psychology, and it comes down to that motivation. It comes down to priorities. It comes down to choices. It comes down to what you value in life. And if you can figure that out in each individual, and ask them enough why questions to find out really what you're doing. I mean, I guarantee I could take anybody out there with any excuse, any degree of illness, ability like that, and I could find out why they're really making the decisions they are. 9 times out of 10 they're crying, and they don't want to admit it, or they're lying, and you can see it, right? But at the same time, that's what we need to get over. You have to have the conversation and be real with yourself and say, what are we doing, and why are we doing it?
Well, you hit it on the nose for a second there, and that's what is it that you value? And that, to me, has been the key to finding motivation and creating adherence in any kind of program. What is it that you're after? What is it that you place almost as a moral imperative in your life? Yeah. And it's easy to define. If you ask that question directly, it's very difficult to answer because it becomes this big kind of woo-woo question. But if you... Yeah. All right, let's quantify it. How many hours a week did you spend watching Game of Thrones? There's no value judgment there. I know people who are incredibly fit who watch every single episode of the Game of Thrones twice.
Exactly.
How many hours a week do you spend preparing your own food? Okay, now how do you square those two numbers with the thing you just told me that you want to be better, faster, stronger, smaller, better looking and more intelligent? Mm-hmm. Are you actually working? What are you doing to work toward that goal? And how can I help you create a plan to get there? And I think the way that we do this fit by 60 years from now thing is by having those rolling goals, having those sort of, okay, when you get to there, then what? Mm-hmm. When you run that half marathon that you've always told yourself you wanted to run, that's a big deal. Like, go run your half marathon, man, and more power to you.
Got you off the couch.
But when you get there, think about what's going to happen next. Are you going to want to run another half marathon? Are you not going to want to run another half marathon because you destroyed yourself, because you didn't train sustainably, because, and you've watched me do this so you can laugh, because you weren't actually ready, because you were in a hurry to get there? Slow down. They're going to have a lot of half marathons. There's going to be another race. There's going to be another chance for you to prove yourself in that level, and you have the rest of your life to figure it out. I know that because there are 80-year-olds running marathons.
It comes down to, again, why are you in a hurry? You said, like you said, get to that benchmark, maintain it for a while. If you're making the right decisions, you're making as many right decisions as you can, right? If you truly are making as many choices that you can, not that you want to, not that what works in your schedule, if you're doing what you can, maintain that. And that's guaranteed to be better. Because, again, like you said, you have the rest of your life.
Well, and making the best decisions you can has to be viewed through a realistic prism. Right? Mm-hmm. If I lived every day of my life optimally according to the things that I know to take care of myself, it would be no problem for me to find some sport that I would excel at and be amazing at it. But, real life happens and willpower wanes and there's, stuff happens. Like you have work trips that take you out in the middle of nowhere for 2 weeks at a time and you have to eat the same box of salad all week or whatever. So you do the best you can, with the circumstances you have, and you keep making the best choices that you can, allowing for your psychology and for, you don't want to be a freak at social occasions and things like that. And that's what makes it sustainable. That's what makes it something you can wake up every day and do, because you're not setting yourself up for this sort of monastic, impossible standard of living that you'll never really realistically attain as an imperfect human.
No, that's exactly right.
Last big tack before we wrap it up, because I know we've been going on for a minute. A whole bunch of science coming out right now about the science of aging. We're looking for that 200-year-old person. One of the things that's come out is a direct causal relationship between strength and all-cause mortality. And there's a whole bunch of different ways that they've measured that, dorsiflexion of the foot, grip strength, and a whole bunch of other different things. Grip strength, I think, is one of the more interesting ones.
That's the most popular. In phys ed right now, we're catching a lot of momentum. It's grip strength.
Yeah, so doesn't that say then, and this is a gross simplification of the science, and I'm just going to put that out there right off the top, but I have to ask the question because it's the elephant in the room. Doesn't that mean you should get freakishly strong while you're still young so that you have that strength to carry you into old age?
That's the challenge, and it's like, if I eat enough vegetables today, does that affect me 10 years from now? Right? Can I turn into a vegetarian in 5 days from now and then go back to eating meat? Did any of that have any impact?
And I don't know if we know.
Right. And so it's when you look at, dietary recommendations, are they for the day? Are they for the week? This is why I'm so against, cheat days and rewards at the end of the time, is because those don't happen in life. Like you mentioned earlier, you want to teach them the principles. So when it comes to how strong you need to be to relate it to diet, if you're that strong now, unless you can maintain that level of strength, will you ever know? And so if you were super strong in your 20s, again, most of the students that I see in my class, before they think this is a fitness class and I'm going to get huge and swole, and then I give them the reality, I'm like, you're going to be as fit as you need to be to reduce injuries for the rest of your life and correct muscle imbalances so you can function in your everyday life for the rest of your life. A few of them will drop out, but the ones that stick around, their minds are blown. Is the lifting that you do right now going to sustain you or have any benefits when you're 60, only because, and this goes back to the 60-year plan, you're not going to be able to maintain that. You know what I mean? It's going to be a blip in the map, and it's going to be like, this would be a really interesting study. Go back and ask every person who made the decision to be unbelievably strong in their 20s and 30s, and ask them if they wish they would have done it or done anything differently, or if they thought it was worth it, or if they're glad they did it because now blank. I'll tell you what I think. Right?
I think
what
I'm
going
to get a wide range there. I mean, it depends on what they were doing.
Absolutely. But they're not going to isolate it from the strength. They're going to go back and say, well, I learned all of these principles on how to live a healthy life. I made it a priority in my life. I made sacrifices and learned how to eat properly. I learned what proper nutrition was. I learned the minimum for me to sustain. And it didn't come back to their peak strength. You know what I mean? I would argue that their peak strength was a blip, but when they regulated and leveled back off to a level that they could sustain safely, comfortably, priorities, time, whatever, that had the more lasting impact on the rest of their life and the benefits than the strongest they could have been at any point in their life.
And let's not pretend that there isn't plenty of training to do to correct muscle imbalances and prevent injury. You have a lot of work to do. Dude, like the irony of a fitness professional, you and I have shared this sentiment before, the irony of a fitness professional is you spend like an enormous amount of your day sitting in a chair, hunched over a keyboard.
Yeah.
So if all I did was go to the gym and do deadlifts and face pulls and other things to correct my posture and bring everything back up the way it ought to be, I could do that every day and still have work left to do, and pressing things overhead and all of the things that I need to do to correct the atrophy that comes from sitting in a chair all day. That's a lot of training. That's a lot of very challenging and rewarding training. And one of the things that I have thought about since we initially started to have this conversation is that I have strength goals, right? I want to get real freaking strong. I don't know how real freaking strong that's going to be yet, but I'd like to have a 500-pound deadlift one day, let's say, which for somebody as tall and lanky as I am is kind of dumb. Like, that's a really hard thing to do.
Long distance.
Right.
Yeah.
But the side effect of training toward that is that I've noticed when I'm walking around at a 400-ish pound deadlift, that at just any time I could walk in, warm up, and pull that weight, that's when my lower back feels the best. That's when my posture is generally the best. So there's a carryover to life, as you're saying. There's a carryover to my life to having that level of strength. Now, am I going to be pulling 4 plates when I'm 50 or 60? I don't know. That'll probably level off, but I'm going to continue to train using that tool as long as I possibly can because it has that carryover into regular life.
And this is what I think everyone needs to ask themselves. It's the why 500 pounds. And the danger is you use that as a measure of strength, as a benchmark, saying, I made it. And it's, to me, the danger of that, and again, not with you because I don't know you, and that's the problem, is 500 safe, effective? Is that good for you? Is that too much? What if you get to 500 and the knee problems start coming back, and your back felt great at 400, but now 500 just works? And so, to me, it's like you're at 400, things are great. Stop. Why 500? Why 500? What does 500 mean to you? And again, for you as an individual, 500 may not be different. My issue is so many people come in and they see 500 is a benchmark. It's a Pete Hitzman standard. It's 500 means strength and strong. I want 500. And they have no idea their body, their limits, their function, their lifestyle. They have no idea if they can do it. And they sacrifice and make too many changes to their lifestyle in the wrong way, and they're teaching and learning, they're doing the things wrong. They're making so many mistakes to get to 500. No one knows why. No one knows why.
The antidote to that is, as you were saying before, don't be in a hurry. Yeah. And to add on to that, don't be married to that number. Like, if I will be okay as a person if I never have a 500-pound deadlift. I'm not
That's
going
the key.
to.
That's the key.
I want to get there. I want to get my half marathon under 1:30. I'd like to do both of those things in a year. That'd be pretty sweet, right?
Sure.
If it doesn't happen, I'm going to be okay.
How do you teach that and how do you train that? I'm okay with. Yeah.
For me, my personal experience was I had to get some monkeys off my back and hurt myself a bunch of times doing it. I had to drive myself to distraction to drop my road bike century time under 6 hours, which isn't even really that fast, but for me it was pretty quick.
Yeah.
And go do my 100-mile mountain bike race and go do my first marathon that was just an utter disaster for the last 6 or 7 miles. Like, I had to get there and check that box and then step back from it and go, okay, yeah, that was really freaking stupid. I'm never doing it again. Fortunately, I came out of that without any career-ending injuries, but it didn't.
You're testing your limits.
Right. Yeah. So I had to come up against it. And, I think for some people that's going to be the case. But your whole perspective is, don't learn the stupid way, man. Like, calm down.
The stupid way is very effective, but I'm saying that professionals need to be professional enough and equip people to know that you don't have to go all the way to the limit, to know that there's a minimum for that's safe for you that you can live with for the rest of your life and still be great. That there's a safer alternative that if you want to go to that level, to that, and then learn your limit or make the mistake or learn the hard way, fine. Mm-hmm. But know that you have to learn the skills to be able to do this for the rest of your life because you're not going to be able to stay at that limit forever.
Let's talk about your work with the Specialized Foundation. I should say for the audience that you were one of the people at least partially responsible for my obsession with bicycles, and at your peak you were kind of a freak on a bike yourself. So how did you get involved with Specialized? So
the Specialized Foundation was started by Mike Sinyard, the owner of Specialized, CEO of Specialized. And he read an article, I think it was in Bicycling Magazine, 2006, somewhere around there, called Riding is My Ritalin. And he realized when he read that article that, holy cow, every time I'm on a bike, it clears my mind. I realized that I started scheduling bike rides before my meetings. And he saw that, he may have been formally diagnosed, but he knew that he probably displayed a lot of the symptoms and probably could have been diagnosed, but also the impact that riding had. And he said, you know what, I got to do something about this. We need to get either kids or youth, someone on bikes, anyone, and maybe we can get riding instead of Ritalin. And so that was his impetus to start the foundation. So one of my side gigs, or they call them side hustle now, is a bike fit technician at a bike shop here in my hometown. And I was fortunate to be trained in the body geometry fit methodology, which is designed and created by Specialized, and they really are the ones who led the way in a lot of aspects of bike fit. So they actually bring sales or fit people who want to be fit technicians. They bring them out to Morgan Hill, California, and train them in their own kind of university structure to be bike fit technicians. And I had been doing bike fits for about 5 years at this point, and I was going for the top level of certification. And they did a presentation. This was the second year into the foundation. They were just getting their things together. They did a presentation on the foundation, and they said, hey, we want to bring cycling into schools. And I'm like, that's weird. And they said, maybe we think phys ed's the best way to do that. And I'm looking around like, okay, that's weird. And they're like, and right now we're trying to develop a curriculum, and we're not really sure where to go, but that's what we plan on doing. We want to get into phys ed. And I was like, I raised my hand, which I never do. And everyone here is a bike fit technician. They're all lifelong like bike shop employees. Like this is their profession. And here I am, just my side hustle. I do it on the weekends. I just want to be better at it. In my background in kinesiology and biomechanics, I'm obsessed with just how people move and move efficiently, right? And then obviously to prevent injuries and treating the cause of a bike injury as opposed to just the symptoms. So I got into bike fit that way. And so I raised my hand and I'm like, well, my real job is an instructor in the Department of Physical Education. My master's was in developing and evaluating physical education curriculums. And I was like, and I've also been a cyclist, an elite cyclist, for the last 6 years. I actually helped, gave some feedback toward a national bike curriculum called Bikeology. I gave some feedback in some of the train-the-trainer workshops with their curriculum, so I was familiar with probably 3 or 4 different cycling curriculums on the market. And so I was like, at CMU, we can, create a curriculum and evaluate and design a curriculum. And with my background in cycling, it'd probably be a pretty good product. It'd be better than anything out there. And they said, that's probably exactly what we need. And so that's how I got connected. And they said, I met with them and I said, listen, these are the reasons why bike programs fail in phys ed. And it came down to money. It came down to training. It came down to safe place to ride. It came down to storage of the bikes. It came down to maintenance of the bikes. Phys ed teachers were tinkering and tweaking the bikes, and it's like, holy cow, who's the liability on there if the wheel falls off? The phys ed teacher isn't a bike shop employee. They don't know if this, how do you know if they know that this wheel was attached or these brakes were attached properly? So there's a liability aspect. So they said, well, that's cool because we're one of the world's largest bike manufacturers, so we can give bikes. Oh, we also have one of the world's largest network of local retailers, so we could connect each program with a bike shop, and they could do the service and check the service twice a year. We could pay for that as well, and then we could bring everybody to Morgan Hill or train them in the use of the bike curriculum, and then you could run them through the training, and we checked every box, and we were like, yeah, okay, that sounds like the best thing that's ever happened to me. So that's how I got connected. That's a little background in the program, and now we're into that. We're in it. At the point right now where we're in about 40 schools across the U.S., coast to coast. We've piloted we're still kind of in the developmental phase. We're just finishing up the curriculum, but we're in middle schools. And the idea is that we want them to ride at a certain amount in terms of the FIT principle, a certain frequency, intensity, and time every day within the cycling program so that we can see that there's a benefit on their brains, on their attention, on their behavior, on other kind of characteristics and markers for ADHD. They did some initial research with Harvard, no big deal, and found that there was an impact, and phys ed teachers are like, clearly there's an impact on their academic performance and their attitude. We're like, we've been saying this for 100 years. And then they did, now they're doing research with Stanford and us to find out how much riding is enough. So you ride 65 to 80% of your maximum heart rate. You do it for 20 minutes, and you do it 3 days a week. And so Stanford's looking at the brain and saying, okay, is this the sweet spot? Is this the prime area to train the brain to have the best benefits on the ADHD symptoms and academic performance? And then, we're working and doing research just finding out, is this still the most effective curriculum? And is this the best way to train people? The next problem we have is a good problem. It is, how do we get this curriculum to everybody? Because we don't want just this document on the website that says, here, everybody, it's free. Because the problem is, people take it just like every other curriculum out there. They're all free, but no one knows how to teach it. No one knows the local shop to fix them. No one can afford the bikes, how to store the bikes. So we have this training program that prepares administrators, community members, everybody to every degree of this program. It trains them all. And so right now we're making that online so that they can go through certain levels of trainings. We, as the certifiers, can say, okay, you passed these levels. It's not just watch it. It's not like you just push play, then go make dinner or go work out. Right? And then you come back and say, oh, this is easy. Right? It's actually engaging. You have to record yourself, provide feedback, provide student performance data. I mean, it is one of the most comprehensive curriculums in physical education ever developed. So we're pretty excited about it.
That is truly, truly amazing. Like there are a lot of sort of bike in school initiatives that have sputtered for the reasons that you sort of outlined there. And one of them around here is a high school mountain bike racing league, which is sweet. But it's sort of external to the schools, so it's not funded, it's not coached, it's just parents trying to do extra,
Right.
and so it's hard to get traction, if you'll pardon the cycling pun, to get that going. But with the backing of a company like Specialized, who has the financial resources and now has the academic chops with you and Harvard and Stanford on board, that could get some purchase, man. That could get some make some real progress. And to tie everything back in, you want to talk about fit for 60 years? A bike is the way to do it. Like,
Absolutely.
mountain bike crashes and broken collarbones notwithstanding, you can ride a bike every day, literally, for the rest of your life and do any kind of different training on it, and it can teach you a whole lot about all kinds of different physical abilities and skills. That's a gateway drug to me for fitness.
Yeah, we're using it as a gateway in schools too. Again, we're not just expecting, I don't have anything against weight training, but there's a lot of different ways to learn program design, to learn overload progression. It's not just with weights, right? It can be with running, it can be with cycling, and so we're using cycling as that gateway to learn other aspects of fitness to complement what they do with the weights and the progressive resistance exercises and just muscle fitness in general. This will complement it. Because the riders start out and first learn to ride effectively and safely. Then they ride for fitness. They change the way they ride based on the goals they have for body composition, all the 5 levels of fitness. And then from there, then they start to design a riding program to improve one of those areas of fitness. Nice. And then they do group rides, they go off campus. It's all kind of tailored in to get them learning about riding safely, giving them schools like what phys ed does, give them the schools and the competence and knowledge and the love of cycling. Then it says, now that you love cycling and select it, and now they have the adherence, now let's do it to improve fitness. Now let's do it if you know how to create a program and ride for certain levels and know what your training zones feel like. It's kind of, again, we're using it, it's cycling, but we're using it to portray all these things that we feel kids are not getting enough of in physical education or in their lives in general.
Well, and underlying principles are the same, right? An energy system is an energy system. You can access that a whole bunch of different ways. Like the running joke in CrossFit circles is that cardio is just lifting weights faster. And it's funny, but it's also kind of true. Like if you're lifting a light weight quickly for a long period of time, it's not what I would do for cardio, but it's fine. Like get on with your bad self.
Just to touch base on your lifestyle comment too. All the fits I've done, I'd say of the 250 fits I've done, most of the people I work with are over the age of 50, and a high percentage are coming from a running background. An injury, a hip issue from running, or just an injury in general, an overuse injury in general, or just, again, age, the process of aging, have brought them to cycling, and now they want their bike to be comfortable, and that's why they see me. I have yet to see somebody go the other way. Man, cycling is so great, I'm going to give this up for running. You look at Lance Armstrong, apparently he did. I don't know if he gave it up for injuries or whatever reason he gave it up because he probably couldn't do a race and he gave it up. Actually, I'm going back to running kind of like he is because you get so much of a better workout in a half hour than what you can do on a bike in 4 hours. Not much better, but it's the equivalent, right? You're spending a lot more time on a bike than you are running. So I'm going back and I'm getting my running shoes, getting the dust off. But other than that, when it comes to injury and overuse, people come to biking. They find biking as that lifelong activity to keep them active for the rest of their life. It's part of the 60-year plan, yeah.
Awesome. Too cool. Man, we've covered a lot of ground. This was a very enlightening talk. The things that you have to say are of particular importance and use right now to a country that's dying at its own hand, or a culture. All of Western society, right? America's the worst, but obesity is a worldwide epidemic. This is the World Health Organization now identifying obesity and its and sedentarism and their offshoots as the number one killer of everyone. So it's important stuff, and we're going to have to address this because our lives aren't going to get more physically challenging. That's not the direction things are going. They're going to get more automated. They're going to get more machine supported. They're going to get more comfortable. When I did the show with Dr. Andy Galpin, we're going to have to manufacture more discomfort. Exercise is the penalty we pay for having a comfortable life. So we're going to have to find we're going to have to find more ways to make that medicine palatable to the masses.
No, I mean, I do bring a unique perspective, and I hope it challenges people. You know, if people can defend their way over mine, I mean, that's beautiful. The conversation is what's beautiful. You have to be able to defend it. If I get people to defend what they're doing, then I think the mission is complete.
Awesome. So if people want to find out more about the work you're doing with the Specialized Foundation, they can go to specializedfoundation.org. All of the information is there, and it's a beautiful website. They've done a very nice job with it. Is there any other work out there that people should look for from you?
No, I mean, my studies are going to look at online physical education, and this is something we didn't bring up. I know you were pretty passionate about it when we brought it up the other day on the irony with online phys ed. So I'm trying to get in ahead of the curve and make sure that if physical education does go online, because schools think it's efficient, no one has yet to provide a substantive quality physical education program online. So that's going to be one part of my doctoral research, to make sure that they do it in the right ways. So that's some more work that might be coming from me, but more recently it's all going to be on the Specialized Foundation. And that's specializedfoundation.org. It's called Riding for Focus. Again, if you know someone in a physical education program, we're opening the grants again, and you get up to 30 bikes, helmets, you get the support from the shops, you get support and training and lifelong training, or program long training from us at CMU. So we support the sustainability of the program. It's not just here's a curriculum, see you later. So it's long term. So if you do know somebody, they can reach out to me. I imagine you'll put my contact information somewhere. If not, then the foundation's got plenty of information, but they are opening the grants again come February if you're looking for more information for that.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll be sure to put a link in the show notes and a link to your contact information as well. And thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you elbowing out a whole bunch of room in your jam-packed schedule.
Hey, no problem. It was my pleasure. It was really fun to be able to walk through that, and I appreciate you presenting your angle and just contributing to the greater conversation, the greater knowledge out there, and hopefully we can get someone to really catch on and make an impact, and hopefully something caught on to someone today, and they're like, what, that makes sense, and they can help do something about it.
Yep, one person at a time, man. We'll make it happen.